Hello guys, Alex Feratov here, and today we have very special guest. We have Lucas Walker. He'll share with us the secrets that he's learned. You basically were putting like consumer products into like retail stores?
Yeah, so we started with products that really are better for retail, very transactional. We did that, but we started selling natural dog treats on e-commerce back in 2014, which is, I wish I did a lot of things differently, but it was back when you really could test and scale ads for like $5. Before that, I co-founded a software company called Vengage, so one of the top 25 startups in Canada. So a lot of that's, I kind of go between e-commerce tactics and software tactics, and that's how I like to find the gold is if it works on both, it's a good tactic. Good copywriting is a tactic that it doesn't matter what you're doing, it always works. And then taking that as almost a wedge to find the little nuances of, well, what does this customer persona like, what does this buyer persona like, and really focusing on that for CPG consumable products, which, as we were talking a little bit about in the green room, it's just so competitive.
Wow, man. Like, I mean, it is incredible because most of like people who are watching, they're probably like in e-commerce, that's our audience. But I think getting your products like into like retail, it's the logical step, right? Like after you like max out or get like, the e-commerce side of things, the online first, and then get like the products into retail. So I'm very excited to learn about this and, to hear kind of, insider's perspective.
And I teased it a little bit, but let's say, so here's a retail stat. Each SKU, so I'm drinking some La Croix water right now, or I think in the States you guys call it La Croix. And one of my mentors is actually their distributor. So you're down in Miami, you want to talk about distribution like Rick Ross. Let's use La Croix as our perfect little case study because everyone knows it. Let's say a case of La Croix sells for $6, so $1 a can, or even let's call it $1.50, because I'm going to talk about some of these strategies, and it's easier if we just use simple numbers because the math gets complicated fast. At $6 a case, do you know how many cases you can expect per flavor or SKU for a store like Kroger's to sell through each week in dollars?
I have no idea, man.
It's about $10 per SKU per store. That's the benchmark. So if you have something that sells for $5, you can expect to do 2 units per store per week. And if that's per SKU. Now let's say you have 4 SKUs on the store. Now it's about $10.
So, okay, SKU. Let's define SKU. Let's say you have the Pamplemousse, right? The LaCroix, right? You have the Pamplemousse, you have the berry, you have the tangerine, mandarin. Like you have. So that's each of those is a SKU, correct?
Yeah. So you have the SKU is sort of the case on the shelf, or maybe a bag of coffee or a can of soup. So if your can of soup costs $1.29 or your bag of coffee costs $15, it averages out across the board to about $10 per SKU per store. That's what the grocery stores are really aiming to get. So it doesn't sound like much, but one SKU in Kroger is over $1 million worth of revenue. So if you have 4 SKUs of La Croix water in Kroger, that's a $4 million account, plus CVS, plus Walgreens, plus Safeway, plus Whole Foods.
That's annually, right?
Yeah.
I thought it's like a lot more than that, the number of products that are being sold.
Well, that's per SKU, but think about how many SKUs a grocery store has. They might have 50,000 SKUs on their shelves, and that's not including the point of sale and everything, because it is such a volume game, and that's why it is competitive. So that's one thing that I did that I'm really proud of, is building out my profit margins to be able to sell into retail.
Wow, man, that's impressive. Yeah. Like, so, and Kroger, like how many locations did it have?
Kroger? So over 1,500.
1,500 locations. And so when you start working like with a retailer, right? Is that like, because these are the stories I'm hearing, like, it's kind of like, are they like squeezing you, like, and just pushing your prices as much as possible down?
I mean, yes, that's their job, but ultimately they also want to be able to promote it and make money. So I know Chris Mead from Cross, he's one of the few people really talking about retail strategies. And he talked about it on Pit Stop, working with buyers to to give a promotion. So you might start to negotiate that. And this is where that software sales background comes in handy, because you realize there's a lot to negotiate on just price. So you might say, you know what, we'll give it to you exclusive for 6 months. We don't have the margin to do that, and we want to be able to promote it. So we'll give you an exclusive. We'll buy flyer space 3 times in the quarter, and we will pay for an end cap in these 27 stores to market test, because you're really trying to get that sales velocity in the first 13 weeks to determine how profitable that's going to be.
Wow. And so what are typically margins? So let's say your costs for the product, let's say like $2, right?
Yep.
And let's say online you would sell it for like $10. Would you try to like match the online price, or like, and how much would actually like retailer would actually pay you for that item?
Yeah. So when going big grocery, there's actually another middleman. And this is like that classic D2C infographic you'd see a few years ago of supplier, distributor, wholesaler, etc. And so normally the retailer will make anywhere from 30 to 60 points. In the pet industry where I was, pet food like Blue Buffalo, Open Farm, on a big bag of dog food, the margins aren't great. But on something like a bed or a collar or a leash, the retail margins, they're making like 60 points on that. So they're aiming to make about 40%. There might be franchise fees, other costs that they have to pay. And then the distributor makes 30 points. So if your retail price is $5, then, or your wholesale price is 5 to 6, you're probably selling to the distributor at about $3.50 or so. So you're making about $1.50 per unit, but you're giving to the distributor. So you take a full pallet, you don't have to open it, you don't have to break it, and ideally even buy the truckload to say, here you go. So if, let's say, each time that full container hits a distributor, that's 6 figures, just boom, boom, boom. So you look at a tractor trailer driving down the road, and that could be $250,000 worth of revenue for a company in that one trailer if it's full. So it's a totally different game, because it's like, we've all seen the screenshots of seeing $250,000 in sales, but it's different when you're driving by, say, a grocery store or a distribution center, and you see about 20 trailers just backed in to unload for the day. And you think that if each one of them has $250,000 in it, that's what, $5 million in revenue. Just look right there. That's what it looks like.
Wow. Retail is so massive, basically.
Yeah. Like, it's so much bigger than we're all almost in our little echo chamber of getting to $1 million in sales is huge. Like, when you think about the number of people, that are comfortably doing $1 million in revenue in a year, it's gone up, but like, it's not that many. You can probably kind of recite most of them off by memory. But if you think that each time a trailer pulls in or pulls out, there's $250,000.
I was walking in Target. I don't know if you have Target like in Canada.
It's a long story. We did briefly.
Yeah. So I was walking Target the other day, and I was actually thinking about similar things, that every one of these products that's like on shelves is probably like, it should be like 8-figure company, right? Like, I mean, because like, I mean, if they are in multiple Targets, like, just imagine kind of the amount of inventory that has to be like, all of these.
And that's the thing too, is if you start to look at your inventory as an internet marketer or direct-to-consumer seller, you can start to see, you know what, let's turn down the ads so we don't run out of inventory. You can start to see that. But when stuff starts selling in Target, and you've worked so hard. So let's say you're going through that buying process, you've built up your online brand, you're showing Target, you know what, we've got a lot of customers in these zip codes, let's start here.
Yeah.
You sell through faster than you thought, but now you're out of inventory because people saw you in Target, they went to the website, and you're like, oh, what are we going to do now? They might not rebuy you for another year because the cycles are so annual. It's slow moving. And so you really have to be thinking like 12 to 24 months ahead when you go into big retail at that level.
So after what, like, revenue, like, have you seen companies like from like zero, just like using retail as their main distribution channel, or it's mostly like online, they validate the product, they know there's demand, and then they go like retail?
I think it's both, and really logistics plays a big impact into it. So if you have a small, easy to ship item, like I've got a deck of playing cards here. This is a great e-commerce product. A premium deck of playing cards can sell for $15, and this might cost $2 to ship out. So if you sell like this much volume, of playing cards. That could be a $60 order that you just send direct, and it's a pretty niche item. Not everyone wants premium playing cards. But if it's something like, say, these, like this tool here, I've got
a lot of good stuff there.
Mini crowbar on my desk. Yeah, I keep it very clean within the shot. Everything outside of the shot is a mess. But no, I was putting my my whiteboard up, and there's a lot of holes in that wall behind it. No, but like something like this, it's a tool. It's going to be heavier, and it might cost like $5 for the customer. It's going to cost, let's say, 80 cents to manufacture, another 20 cents for packaging, and then $4 to ship it out because of the weight. You're not really making a lot of money unless you sell it as a set. So for a simple product like this, retail is a great avenue to really strategize and launch with, but e-commerce is absolutely there as well. And I think that one of the most fascinating things is we saw this on, did you ever do any Amazon selling?
I mean, long time ago.
But do you remember like the free ebook is a value add? Like, let's say you're selling Instant Pot accessories and you do a free Instant Pot recipes guide.
Oh, I mean, we do that still, like till this day.
Oh, and absolutely. It's a great strategy that should be used. But like, I feel like 5 years ago, it was just the hottest thing on Amazon. But if you're selling this, then it could be that you're trying to capture that information in person, or you're almost doing that as lead gen, where it's, okay, now you have this Richard company, you sell some of your more profitable items online, but you know that of your email list, you have a lot of Home Depot sellers and they're in these area codes. So when you combine your flyer purchase or your new product launch in Home Depot with that data, then you can start to drive that revenue in both places.
Okay, so retail drives e-commerce, e-commerce drives retail. It's kind of like
absolutely. And a lot of people think it has to be competitive, but it really is a 1 + 1 = 3. It's like when you focus on your organic search and paid, and both seem to lift up better when you're doing both. And it might be that you've done a big influencer campaign where people just recognize your product, or you get a ton of views, but they don't convert. Then they see your ads and they remember it. So those ads convert better because you did it. Or it's really stacking revenue strategies is probably the easiest way to say it.
Because I mean, I can imagine, let's say, putting your product, let's say, in like 1,500 locations, right? And having, let's say you have like 5 or 10 SKUs, like, let's say not that many, but let's say putting like 5 or 10 SKUs of each product. You need to have the stock. You need to have, like, from my perspective, it's like incredibly cash intensive.
It is.
So how these companies do it? Like, do they have like big like loans? They're over leveraged. They're just to have it, or like
financing, good margins. And I think that's part of the reason why omnichannel is so important, where if you can make something that's very cash flow positive on your website. Both Native and Schmidt's Deodorants founders have talked about this, where they took that margin for the website and direct to consumer to increase their retail presence, because online will only get you so far. And so eventually you do have to say, are we content just going along here, or is this a big brand that we want to potentially sell off one day, and then go to that next level and go to the retail side of things? So a smart business will be very cash flow positive from day one, and then use that margin to go in and get some of those big accounts, because it's nice to be able to just sell by the truckload while the website's also running. So you come into the morning, you've done a bunch of sales, and then you send out by the pallet or by the truckload, and then you have 6 figures coming in. So but it also comes down to just good accounting and being financially aware of what your margins are, and knowing what promos you can do and where you can go with it.
Wow, that's incredible. I can imagine. So you need kind of like very sophisticated inventory management, like software, right? Or do you get the reports from, like, do you have access to the backend, let's say Target?
Yeah.
Kind of like how much in stock you have of each item? Like, how does that work?
Both. It's historical data. You can buy data. I'm actually launching a podcast with Omnium CPG that covers a lot of this and demystifies it. But they'll buy 104 weeks of Nielsen data to predict trends, and then take your data of knowing what sells, because especially for anything with a shelf life, chocolate always sells well, peanut butter always sells well. But what about all those fun, funky flavors that you just never really see? Like, you're wearing a black t-shirt right now. I'm wearing a black t-shirt. Black shirts always sell well, but it's not enough to have just a black shirt. So really taking both your proprietary data and industry data that's available to make smart decisions.
What are the biggest mistakes you see people are making when it comes to like retail, getting into retail, or like running their like retail operation?
I think going in not making enough margin or even profit per unit, and thinking that they'll make enough in volume.
Is that coming down to the negotiation process? Like kind of like they just like
no, it's not knowing their business enough, like not factoring in packaging losses, stuff like that tends to drive up the cost. And I think, okay, we're making this much per item, but then they don't factor in returns, other miscellaneous costs, or they think that getting 22 points is enough margin to grow the business. So I think it's coming down to A, knowing your costs, and then B, really having a quality strategy that goes along with that.
What is a reasonable like margin, would you say, kind of like to run, like let's say it was like retail, like in the retail stores, like what is a reasonable margin, like minimum you would say? Obviously that would depend on items. You said like
yeah,
some can break, some of the packaging gets damaged, some are more kind of like resistant to that stuff. Probably like if you sell water like this, nothing will happen to the packaging, right?
Well, they might double load another skid on top of it and then crush a bunch of bottles.
Oh, really? That can
oh, yeah. Like think about all the stuff that could happen during transportation. Let's say some guy's coming in with the forklift and misses the skid and then just punctures a bunch of bottles. Like shit like that just like it sucks, but it happens. So I would say probably 30, 33 points. If you've got a solid business plan and you know where the losses will be, you can really forecast it. Go 30 to 33 gross points, but that's tight. And sort of the way that I like to do it is what's my cost per unit and what does it sell for? And if that needs to really be about 5 times the, not accounting for discounts or anything else. If you sell it for $2, you should be selling the retail, or if it's about $2 to make, your final retail cost should be about $10. So that's just,
oh wow,
just as sort of, but again, it depends. If it's a more expensive item, you have more profit. So it really depends, but I'd say a third is 30 to 33% is a safe bet. Don't go any lower than that. Once you start seeing 20s, it gets low.
That's impressive, man. Like, so, and I mean, this kind of like, as you said, it's so competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they like, do you see kind of like, I mean, obviously, like, so e-commerce side is booming, right?
Yep.
Are there companies that are like as strategic as they are like with e-commerce side, that just like going straight after like retail and just like carving their niche? I mean, I've seen like few of those, like here in Whole Foods, they have these like bars. It's called Clio or Clio, like these are like Greek yogurt bars.
Yep.
And they started like literally like few years ago. And so I don't think they went like e-commerce side because like the item is like $2 or like $3. I mean, it's simply like wouldn't.
And not everyone wants to buy a case of a product that they haven't tried before, because to get their AOV up enough, they have to be selling like $60 worth of bars. Are you going to spend $60 on bars that you've never tried? Like it's hard. So I think that's a great way to start. But it's interesting that you mentioned Whole Foods, because who owns Whole Foods?
Amazon.
But even then, it's almost an asynchronous look at sales data, because Whole Foods can say, you know what, these items are selling really well and they sell with these products. Let's add it on. And I think that's something that's just an interesting trend we're seeing more of, is using retail locations as fulfillment centers, especially for like large brands where Steve Madden, for instance, if they have shoes located in their stores all across the country, they don't need a dedicated warehouse for inventory and stores. They can just go in the back, especially if they say, you know what, our main distribution center is in Wisconsin, but somebody just ordered in Miami. That's going to be really expensive to ship. Do we have any shoes closer that we can then save $3 or $4 on that sale and shipping costs, and the customer gets it faster, so we get a 5-star review? So it's really interesting to see the logistics play at that big scale, because I think that's where it goes to smaller, more independent sellers like us, is that's what's possible. But as things get more competitive in 10, 15 years, what will the e-commerce space look like?
Yeah, like, wow, that's so impressive. That's so impressive. So what is, I've heard but that was, I guess, before COVID, like the e-commerce, like 10% of all of the sales that are happening, kind of like retail was like 90%. Is that still the case?
So the sales have gone up, but again, take borrowing from Amazon. What percentage of book sales in the US do you think are e-commerce? So just selling books.
Probably like 50%, 60%.
Nah, it's like 35. I don't know the exact
Really?
number, but it plateaued.
Still, Barnes and Nobles, like, I mean, or those type of stores still sell stuff?
Walmart, used books, local stores. Walmart is a huge bookseller. Even grocery stores that have like the latest Dan Brown book or 50 Shades of Grey, they account for a lot of books being sold. Wow. And so looking at that, it kind of did plateau. And it makes sense because there are just some things like food. Sometimes you want to taste it. Sometimes you just like to go and browse. Or even buying clothes. It fits differently. I've got these long ass orangutan arms. So I like to put on a sweater first because half the time the sleeves only go down to here, which is interesting to see that trend play out. But what I think is the biggest trend coming out of pandemic is click and collect, because done well, you can't beat it. You go, you get your order, you can check it out to see if there are any issues. You're not having to worry about shipping and hassle and returns. And instead of having their staff kind of stand around chit-chatting, they can pack orders, get it ready, and they get customers through a retail location a lot faster, even though the sale was processed online.
Click and collect. That's what Walmart introduced that option, right?
I think so. Walmart, a few of the grocery stores had it where you can get your groceries stored in like a cold container. And then with curbside pickup, it was a year ago just something that everyone had to start offering. But I think customers, when it's done right, they really like it. So I think that's sort of the biggest thing to come out. It might even be called hybrid commerce if you wanted to view it like that. But I think that's interesting to follow as well.
Do you offer this kind of like as a service? Let's say, okay, someone has like successful like brand, like e-commerce brand, like, I don't know, 7-8 figures, and they want to get into like retail. Do you offer this as a service?
That would be the smart thing to do because people keep asking me for it. Yeah. So maybe I should. The reason that I don't is I'm working with, like I mentioned, with Omnium CPG. We're launching our Bricks and Clicks podcast. So maybe down the road in a couple months, we'll put together some packages with that for either strategy or advising, promotional stuff. But before we go into that, give Bricks and Clicks a listen. It's with a bunch of applied mathematicians who, like, if you think we're good at analyzing data, Alex, you got to watch these guys do it. It's like watching them predict the future. Is
it live or not yet?
The episodes are recorded. I'll send you a couple so you can preview, but it's going live on Friday. So by the time this airs, they touch wood that Apple gives us the approval. It'll be out there.
Awesome. So basically, what these people do? You said the applied mathematicians. Like, what do they do? Like, they analyze kind of like the trends, or what?
Yeah. So they analyze the Nielsen data and data from other sources and your own sales data to see what's selling, and then.
So it's like a business analyst, but like extremely sophisticated or something like that.
But for your marketing spend, so for trade marketing. So if you go into Target and the end cap display, that one you have to pay for it. And it gets expensive fast. There's all kinds of fees. And so you got to be wise with what you're buying and spending. So that's what they really help with. Here's a really interesting example. In 2019, I think Thanksgiving in the US fell on the last day or the last possible day that it could. And so when Thanksgiving in the US is later, one of the products that just doesn't sell that well is like canned beans and stuff, because people say, you know what, we got to save a little bit of money on Thanksgiving dinner this year. Do we really want to buy canned? Nobody eats them anyway. Let's not buy that. Let's buy extra gravy. Wow. So it's just knowing the forecast trends like that, where when you have a big spike, how big will that spike in sales be? Because not everything is consistent.
How accurate they are, these guys?
It's pretty accurate. It's so this is just a weird sentence to say, but I've got some magician friends and some mathematician friends, and like their predictions all come out the same. So I don't know if I just hang out with a bunch of charlatans or what's going on, but it's incredibly accurate, especially when you are thinking of purchasing several $1 million worth of inventory that's going to be sold over the next 12 months. What happens there? And stuff that you don't even think about, like packaging. Well, what happens if you run out of packaging and you need certain labels for retail, and now you're waiting 6 weeks for fresh packaging? Like, it's an ingredient in your product that people don't think. Like when you sell online, you can throw it in a poly mailer. You can't do that in store.
If you were to start like brand new, let's say like new brands, right? Like from scratch.
Yep.
Like what industry you would choose? What kind of like price point you would choose? How many like would you focus on one item? Would you choose like, let's say 5 items? Like how would you do that?
So I think
like
socks are the best product to sell online. And here's why. Like it's a bulletproof product. It's one size fits all.
Like the Bombas?
Yeah, like really any sock. It could be a comfort sock. It could be just like a stylish sock.
Happy Socks, right, in Europe, like Bombas in the United States, but 9-figure companies at this point.
Stance
right?
Socks, there's Socksy, there's so many, but think about how many like if you think $10 a pair of socks, people will go spend $50 and buy a bundle. So you get your average order value up. It doesn't take a lot of space to ship. It's soft, so you can't break it. It's one size fits all. It's visual, so people will put it on Instagram. If you see a well-organized sock drawer, that's very satisfying to look at. You could get 1 million followers on Instagram posting just very satisfying drawers, and people would subscribe to that channel. Maybe not 1 million, but 100,000 organic for sure. The margins are juicy, and everyone wears socks, and it's really a consumable product because they wear out, they get holy. And I think I'd have a lot of fun with it. I don't know, maybe I should test it, but I would have something stupid like for $1,000, you can have a fresh pair of socks every day for a year.
Subscription for socks. Some people go for that, right?
You can do subscription or even just bundles. I think it's a great product to bundle so you don't overdo it. But especially when people get back in office and they're seeing each other again, like it's something kind of fun to show a funky sock. People take pictures of it, so it's very shareable. Like it's competitive and it's been done and the trend might be done, but people always wear socks. Like, so I don't know. I think socks are the perfect e-commerce product. That's probably what I would do. I've also would maybe create my own little marketplace. So I've been thinking as I go more and more through the podcast network, should I start calling Shure and Rode and some of those brands and then selling some of those items because it's a little bit more premium and it's a little bit more search friendly. And there are times when to create a brand and times to leverage existing brands. So I might not create the microphone per se, but I could do a better XLR cable or something that goes along with that. So maybe USB cables specifically for audio. I would try to solve a really specific pain point.
And then you would start online or you would go like retail? Like
absolutely start online. Absolutely. Because you get that first party data. It's a lot easier to have a profitable business doing a few $100,000 in sales online versus retail. But retail, some products are just better for retail and some products just eventually you're going to have some sort of a retail strategy if you want to make it a big business that you can potentially exit one day.
That's a very interesting perspective. So in terms of the like specific like industries that you see, so you mentioned socks, like different like accessories, like more like electronics, like is a possibility. Any other industries you see kind of like for example, you know, I mean, I see I'm a man and like I'm in Target, right? Yep. And you see all of this like shelves filled with products for ladies,
this is what I've said. And so Supply, Beard Brand, I'm friends with those guys. If you go through the store, there are all the boxes for women with perfumes and makeup and stuff. There's none for guys where you can get the consultation, go sit in. We both have beards. How nice would it be to have someone just kind of go rub some beard oil on your face and say, want to buy? And again, that's a great retail product because it's very physical. You get that touch, you smell it, and you can really hit on other senses. When an online product has to be very visual. Maybe you can get descriptive with it, but there's no substitute for like really smelling it. But then you come in contact with that product for the first time in retail, and then you move that still online. So you capture that customer data because maybe only going back to chocolate and peanut butter always doing well in retail, maybe those products do really well, and then people want this strawberry, they want the funky berry flavors, but you only really offer those on your website or the specialty store. So it really is thinking of how can everything feed into one another and really having no standalone items, because that's a dead end. You don't want it to just go and have one end.
If you were to let's say you have successful business, let's say 7-8 figure level, and you want to get into like retail. Would you find like someone like you with relationships with these chains, or would you just like knock these people on LinkedIn and like what would you do?
I would start cold calling and trying to get some of those meetings. I'd find a mentor who's probably a buyer on the other side of things, and somebody who has done it before to really do a bit of advising, just because. And Chris Mead talked about it. He once lost like $15,000 because the stickers were on incorrectly. And I would just find someone who's done it. I would go through a few smaller chains first to start to get a feel for what that process looks like, and then really get a bit of sell-through data. Make sure that like really uncover any hiccups. So you do it with a chain of say 40 stores and not 4,000 stores. And then that's when I would really hire a mentor or a consultant or an advisor who's done that before and who can really take you there.
In terms of Costco, are you familiar with Costco and the volumes that kind of like they operate with?
So Costco? Yeah. So a test order for Costco is a truckload.
Test order?
Yeah.
Holy shit. So it's like, is that like truckload for like just one location or something, or like,
that'll probably go to their distribution center and then they'll put it in each store. So you might do a regional test, but if you're selling into Costco, you're just selling truckload after truckload after truckload, but it has to be packaged specially because a lot of times brands don't really want their stuff in or so let's say Walmart doesn't want you selling the same product at Costco for less.
Oh, the price, kind of like the price difference.
Yeah, so that might be why you make a 3-pack or a big bulk pack. And you have to know your margins going into Costco. Costco doesn't make a lot of money on the actual margins. They have like net 90 payment terms. Costco's hard, but it's lucrative if you get in. Like Costco's my white whale, Alex. If I could get into Costco, I would do that deal. I would find a way to make that deal work.
So you would say like on top of the like all of these like retail chains, so Costco is like top of it, like you would say in terms of the volume and kind of like.
Well, that's my personal one. I think that like I wouldn't put aside anything else just to get into Costco, but it's profitable if you can be successful. Like think about just selling by the truckload to Costco and knowing that those sales are going to sell through.
So not 90 terms means like, let's say, so today you ship to them, right? So they pay you after 90 days, or they pay 90 days after they sell it?
That's a good question because Costco is tricky, but usually, and I don't quote me on the net 90, but their payment terms are basically after the purchase order goes through and everything, you're getting paid 90 days later after that inventory goes on the truck.
You must be having like some good like credit lines to support that.
There are companies that do just purchase line or just purchase order financing. Like you see it on Shark Tank once in a while. They'll say, oh, we want whatever money for 20% and we want a line of credit for purchase orders. So there are companies that will do financing just for purchase orders. It's a pretty safe bet, but it also bridges the gap of that capital. And it goes into things of, well, what happens if you have $100,000 stuck in PayPal? Like that might mean you can't do that big Costco order. So that's where another implication of that really comes from.
Wow. I've seen Chris Mead, he posted, right? Like he had a few months ago.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. And we talked about it on my show where it's like, what do you do when you're handcuffed like that? And it can really cripple your business. And there's no easy answer if PayPal's holding on your money. It's like you keep calling and put the pressure on, but they're pretty ironclad.
Wow, and that's so impressive. One of the things I've heard, like I've read, the case study of businesses that have been acquired. Like one of them is the Drunk Elephant, the skincare brand. And so the lady like grew the brand pretty much through she was mainly distributing through Sephora, right? She had some other options, I think, like some other like potential kind of like retail like distributors. But then she decided just to focus like all in on Sephora and like pretty much kind of like collaborate with them on a very like close basis. Yeah. And that's, I think, mostly how they grew the brand. I mean, now they're everywhere, like Amazon, like online and stuff. Would you do that? Would you just focus like on one like strategic partner, kind of like work with them on a very close basis? Or would you try to distribute like and work with as many like distributors and like retail partners as possible?
I mean, you might not have the choice. Sephora or one company might be the only one who's willing to take you on and sign you into an exclusive deal. And in that case, I would absolutely go all in and try to get that sales volume up as fast as I can. I think year one, that's what I would do, is focus on one, but I always like to hedge my bets a little bit, because if you're in two chains and your product's not selling that well, you can go take other, if it's the chain versus your product. If you're in two stores and your product's not selling that well, it's your product. But also, if you are in two stores and it's not selling in one, you can buy it back, maintain that relationship with your buyers, and then move it to the other store and have it clearance. But if you're starting out and a little bit more bootstrap and you don't want to go out and borrow or sell a big chunk of your company, then absolutely figure out what it takes to sell in one store. And especially if it's a store like Sephora, where if you know your product will sell there, you can sell in other places. And then you can almost look at it like you don't have to rush new SKUs in. You don't have to manage as much inventory. So I think the answer is, it depends. If it's your first time doing something, going slowly is not usually a bad thing. Slowing things down a lot of times can be the keys to victory, both in sports and in life. So I guess, I don't know, I'm giving a really roundabout answer, but I think that approach is probably the safe, smart thing to do. As entrepreneurs, we don't always like the safe, smart things. That's why we get into this line of work. So it depends on your risk tolerance and a number of other things.
Cool. That's awesome. So what would be your piece of advice for entrepreneurs who want to get into retail, who want to get into kind of retail chains and have the distribution? What would be your main piece of advice?
I would say three things. Number one is know your margins and make sure that if you do get a big ass purchase order, you're not losing money on that, because that would just suck.
Because that might look good on paper, right? Big.
And you get the revenue and you're chasing it for vanity. And then, so let's say you get a $42,000 purchase order, but you actually lose $800 to fulfill it after everything. That would just suck. So number one is know your margins. Number two is really work with the buyers and the stores to have some sort of working relationship. They know what sells. Really work with them. And I think number three is don't think of it as mutually exclusive online versus offline. Use all of your online success to catapult your retail success. If you know that you have a lot of customers in one area, promote hard there. Maybe geo-target some of your Facebook ads to just rein it in, and you'll see your online sales go up along with your retail. So I think that's really the third key, is look at how they can both drive one another.
So leverage the data, right? Have you seen that a lot? Certain geographical areas just perform a lot better, so then you would just dedicate more of the budget there, or more inventory, or somehow use the data?
Anywhere that you're local to will always do better. So if you're manufacturing in Texas, for instance, I would do all my working ad set and just put a made in Texas into the ad copy. Anytime that you can do that, it's anytime that you can give a fresh perspective without reinventing the wheel, it usually performs well. Any mentions to chains or locality. So let's say you're launching a product in sort of just the Toronto market. It's a big enough market. You can launch, you don't need to go nationwide. And whenever you can get more specific, that usually does well. I also find that if your product is better in more urban areas versus rural, that maybe just geo-target and create an audience within 50 miles of each major city. And I've never been a big ad buyer, so I'm sure you've had guests that know better than me, and I could very well be wrong on it. But whenever I buy or do Facebook ads, or I kind of start as big and broad as possible, and then just start chiseling away to say, you know what, Quebec, or in Canada where it's French speaking, let's get rid of that. That definitely won't convert. And then just kind of chipping away and then letting the AI do its thing. So I figure I know what won't work. The AI knows what works. Let's meet in the middle. So I don't know if it's the most effective way, but I find it's worked well enough for me, and just knowing what continuously kind of converts. And for me, it was a lot of retargeting and engaging with a warm audience. So really the two ad sets were introduce the audience to the brand, and then really help them find the products on their own as organically as possible. And then the moment that they show some purchase intent, whether it's viewing a product, adding to cart, etc., then that's really where to spend the majority of the ad spend.
How is the retail strategies, would you say Canada versus United States? Is that any different? Getting to stores, the sales volumes you can expect? I mean, Obviously, sales volumes might be like, Canada is
volumes are similar. Canada, it's a bigger country, so there's just more geographic space. And then there's also the bilingual, so packages in Canada have to be in English and French. There has to be there are just those regulations. And then just knowing the price points. Canadians like feet on the street. Canadians like local. It's just, if you can have some sort of local presence, it will always help. But the strategies will be the same. And the Canadian market tends to lag behind the US. So if it's a trend now in the US, it'll probably start taking off in Canada in a couple of years.
That's interesting. Lucas, thank you very much, man.
Yes, my pleasure.
And where do people find you? How do people connect with you?
Just search for Lucas Walker. You'll see a professional basketball player and a male model.
Which one are you?
I am those things. If you want it, I'll dunk on you and pose for photos all day. But I'm pretty active on Twitter. If you search Lucas Walker on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you'll hear my flagship Rolled Up podcast, my tactical e-commerce podcast, Pit Stop, and then Bricks and Clicks is coming on the network as well. If you want more retail strategies,
Bricks and Clicks. That's a good name.
I try once in a while. Like. When I'm on my A game naming things, Alex, I'm the best in the biz.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining me. I mean, I've learned a lot from our conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing like your next project, see how those blowing up, and I think I'll be in touch. When we're ready to go into retail, we're doing pretty well like online with our brands. Yeah. When we're ready to go like into retail, I'll be in touch.
Awesome. Take care, Alex.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Lucas. Thanks, everyone.